Hello, and welcome to this episode of The Forefront, a video cast from the Association of Diabetes Care and Education Specialists. Today, we're discussing the many different pathways to healthy eating patterns in Hispanic and Latino communities. This episode and today's guest are brought to you by Fresh Avocados. Love one today. Love One Today is a leading source of the healthiest reasons and tastiest ways to enjoy fresh avocados. As a science-based resource, Love One Today provides turnkey solutions that make it easy for health professionals to stay on top of the latest research and confidently recommend fresh avocados. I'm Sasha Uhlman, the Director of Diabetes Education and Prevention Programs at the Association of Diabetes Care and Education Specialists. And joining me today is Lorena Drago, a registered dietitian and certified diabetes care and education specialist. She's the editor of Food for Thought column of the ADCS in Practice Journal and ADCS's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee chair, and the author of 3 educational nutrition books. As an expert in the cultural considerations in diabetes care and education, I'm happy to welcome her today for this practical conversation about how members of the diabetes care team and other healthcare professionals can support healthy eating among Hispanics and Latinos in a way that reflects their personal preferences and cultural traditions. We recently met with dietitian Erin Polinsky-Wade on our podcast, The Huddle, and discussed the importance of unsaturated fats and fiber for diabetes management. If you haven't tuned in yet, be sure to do so. In today's discussion, we'll be identifying nutrient-dense sources of these nutrients in the context of Hispanic and Latino eating preferences. Healthy eating is my favorite CDCES 7 self-care behavior, and I think it's fair to say that is certainly the most delicious one. So I'm thrilled to be having this discussion to empower you to support this self-care behavior within the community. Lorena, thank you for joining us. My brief introduction wasn't enough to capture all that you do to support and expand person-centered diabetes care and education. Can you share a little bit more about your background as it pertains to today's topic?
Yes, thank you so much, Sasha. I specialize in the multicultural aspects of diabetes self-management education, and I work to develop culturally and ethnically oriented nutrition and diabetes education materials. I founded Hispanic Foodways, which received the New York City Small Business Award in 2006. I am also the food editor for Diabetes Self-Management magazine.
So, we know how important it is for healthcare professionals to deliver personalized and culturally appropriate care. One of the largest growing demographics in the U.S. are people who are Hispanic or Latino, and they're also at higher risk of developing prediabetes and diabetes. So for members of the diabetes care team who must provide culturally considerate care for diverse Hispanic or Latino people, can you briefly share an overview of these terms and communities we'll be talking about?
Yes, certainly, Sasha. So many of you that are listening today, you're probably aware of the high prevalence of type 2 diabetes. So when it comes to U.S. adults, overall, there is a 40% chance of developing this disease. But if you are Hispanic or Latino, and if you're an adult, the chance is more than 50%, and you're also likely to develop it at a younger age. So when we look at the Census Bureau, the Hispanic Latino population in the United States in 2020, 62.6, almost 63 million. And there are more than 30 Hispanic and Latino subgroups that are living in the United States, and each of them have their own unique heritage. So in 2019, the largest Hispanic subgroups living in the United States were, the largest of them are Mexican, which are the largest at 61.6%, followed by Puerto Ricans, who are United States citizens, because Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. Central Americans, which the largest subgroups are Guatemalans and Salvadorians, and then Honduras. Then it's followed by South Americans, and there are 9 Hispanic countries in South Americans. Now, the largest of the subgroups are Colombians. They are the largest representatives. And then when it comes to Caribbean Hispanics, they are Cubans and Dominicans. So I also want to share something that it's important, and sometimes it's a little bit confusing for many. And that is the terms such as Hispanic, Latinos, and something that is rather new, which is Latinx. So I want to clarify those terms. So Hispanic refers to individuals in the American continent and Spain. So those are the ones that speak Spanish or are descendants of people who speak Spanish. While Latino refers to individuals who are born in or have ancestry in Latin American countries, regardless of what language they speak. So someone who's born in the US, whose parents are from Guatemala would be Latino. But a person who's born in Brazil, South America, is Latin, but not Hispanic. They speak Portuguese. So a Spaniard is Hispanic, but not Latin because they're European. So now let me just explain the other term. And Spanish, meaning the language, is a gendered language. So the word Latino, ending in O, is masculine. The word Latina is feminine. So when you say the word Latino or Latinos, it encompasses both female and male. So the X at the end of Latino has replaced the OA feminine to resist the gender binary. And it has become very popular among younger Latinos, the academia, and the media. So including the X at the end of Latin has become very challenging for many Spanish-speaking persons who have difficulty pronouncing it. So what has occurred is that it has not been used. And according to the Pew Research Center, only 3% of Latinos recognize what Latinx is and even use it. So it is very important to underscore that while these communities also share many commonalities, whether it's Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, or other groups, they are not a monolith. And this is key to consider because the message from healthcare professionals must adapt to individuals that are coming from these different countries. So, for example, Mexico and Mexicans are not a monolith. They're different variations. Someone can come from the north, the south, the central Mexico, or the coastal areas. The same thing will happen to a Colombian like me. I come from the coast, but there are 9 different regions in Colombia, and they have distinct cultures. So it's having different mini cultures within a country. Same thing happens in Guatemala and hey, right here in the United States. So even just like Hispanic Latino population is not a monolith, then even rates of diabetes are not the same.
Absolutely. Your last point about each subgroup being unique is important because, of course, nutrition guidance should always be personalized and there's no one size fits all. Can you share a little bit more about different cuisines from the subgroups you mentioned above?
Corn and corn products have a special place in Mexican cuisine. And in addition to that, other foods that are integral are rice, beans, chilies, and pumpkins. Other foods are fresh avocados, tomatoes, nopales, which is cactus, mushrooms, agave, fruits, eggs, chickens. Now, when it comes to Central America, as we move, and there are 6 countries, Spanish-speaking countries in Central America, the tortilla is used, but more as an accompaniment with certain foods. But we see that tomatoes, onions, cilantro are used, cocoa fruit seeds, but we also see avocado as part of a heritage food. And we see, especially in El Salvador, we see that the tortilla or the masa is used for a national dish, which is the pupusa. And that is stuffed with beans and sometimes cheese and other different types of food. When we move from Central America to the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, Cuba, and the Dominican Republic. And now root vegetables become central to the cuisine in the Caribbean Hispanic. And chilies, which were predominant in Mexico and used sparingly in Central America, they disappear. The food is well seasoned, but it is not spicy hot. And they eat a variety of fruits, and also they have mangoes and papayas and bananas and orange and passion fruit and mamey, which is a delicious orange fruit that is rich in beta carotene, and it's sold frozen and consumed in shakes. However, what we do see is that avocado continues to be a heritage fruit, and it is served along rice and beans, which is a staple in the Caribbean. Vegetables may be served in the form of a salad, but what we do see in Caribbean cooking is that sofrito, which is the base that infuses all the dishes or the majority of the dishes, such as a mixture of onions and sometimes tomatoes or sour oranges, but mostly cilantro and coriander leaves and peppers that are called ajicitos, and they are chopped and mixed and sauteed, sometimes with olive oil or vegetable oil, and that permeates with flavor and aroma and just pure deliciousness in all of the dishes. But certainly rice and beans are just the main dish in most of the dishes. And finally, I am going to end with South America. And just to say that South America includes at least, 9 Spanish-speaking countries. And then if you want to add Brazil as a Latin country, but of Portuguese heritage, we have a vast region which will be very difficult to include all these different cultures, rich cultures, and summarize them. But they're certainly not a uniform group. But the basis of the cuisine will be potatoes, and it will be corn. Especially Colombia and Venezuela share many similar dishes based on corn. And then we have potatoes in Colombia, Ecuador, and Bolivia, and we have rice. And I cannot forget to include avocado, which we have many dishes that include avocado, especially in soups like in ajiaco, and also as part of our salads. And we accompany that with our main dishes with the rice. And Argentina, the cone section of South America, are meat lovers. So we have albóndigas, we have ceviches, and we have croquette, empanadas, and sopas. And of course, in the regions in the Pacific and the Atlantic, we have a lot of fish dishes.
I'm getting hungry already. Thank you for the wonderful overview of common foods in these Hispanic and Latino communities. What specific recommendations do you have for our healthcare professional viewers to deliver a bit more culturally relevant care and education to help their clients improve their health in meaningful ways?
Well, something that I always say is ask and listen. And sometimes is that I like to do is ask some questions up front. So when you are a healthcare professional, you may counsel Hispanics from different parts of Latin America. And it is important to take the time to learn about and better understand their lifestyle and their culture before making any recommendations. So some questions that I want to share to enhance that cross-cultural communication will be, what are your favorite foods from your culture? So let them share with you about their culture before assuming what their culture is. And then is, how often do you eat them? The other thing is, make sure that you ask about the food instead of assuming. Remember what I said about the tortilla. A tortilla could mean a flat round disc for some, and it could mean an egg omelet for some. So when someone says, I eat a tortilla, you can follow up and ask, what is a tortilla for you? How often do you eat it? How do you prepare it? Or is it pre-prepared? Do you buy it already prepared from a supermarket? And as I mentioned again, while one person may still prepare homemade sofrito, another person may already buy it commercially from a supermarket. That is a big difference. So you want to, if that person is already preparing that or purchasing it commercially, you may want to discuss about ingredients and make sure that they are purchasing the best ingredients. And then incorporate your client's cultural foods into a realistic meal plan for that person.
Can you talk for a minute about the research that shows the impact of culturally relevant care and education?
I do want to share a study supported by the Avocado Nutrition Center about the impact of providing culturally relevant nutrition guidance. And this was a clinical trial that included 72 Hispanic American families, and 97% were of Mexican heritage. And the families were randomized to receive one of two levels of avocado allotment, plus nutrition education based upon my plate, mi plato, for 6 months. So the lower avocado allocation provided 3 avocados per family per week, represented habitual avocado intake in the cohort. So the higher avocado allotment provided 14 avocados per family per week, or up to 2 avocados per family per day. So the study worked with registered dietitian nutritionist trained promotoras to deliver culturally and language appropriate nutrition education in the participants' home. And the promotoras, I just want to explain, they are trusted lay community members who receives training to provide elementary health education in the community without being a professional healthcare worker, and who serves as a liaison between the community and traditional healthcare services. So compared to low avocado allotment group, the high avocado allotment group had a significant reduction in calories, in saturated fat and sodium, as well as dairy, refined greens, and red and processed meats. So these nutrients and food groups are often overconsumed in the population. So another thing that I wanted to share, Sasha, was that neither group experienced changes in body weight, BMI, or waist circumference, despite the added calories from the additional avocados. The participants in the study also reported lower intakes of animal and vegetable protein, polyunsaturated fat, vitamin D, and mineral. And that was calcium, magnesium, potassium, and iron. So the findings demonstrate that a heritage food like fresh avocado can be a pathway to healthy eating patterns, and that culturally appropriate nutrition education, it is also important for supporting healthy eating behaviors. So as with all study, we must consider limitations. For this study, that includes drawbacks of all validated food frequency questionnaires, which prevent the generalization of the findings. However, what I just want to say is that the results support that including fresh avocados in nutrition education to support weight management while reducing overconsumption of saturated fat and sodium for Hispanic families.
And wow, yeah, that's really interesting. And as a registered dietitian nutritionist, I know that incorporating certain fats and fiber into your daily eating can improve satiety, satisfaction, blood glucose trends, and overall health. In fact, we've done a podcast on this topic that we'll make sure to include in the show notes. With this research in mind, as well as the overview you gave us earlier about Hispanic and Latino cuisines, can you talk about how unsaturated fats and fiber fit into these eating patterns?
Yes, Sasha. Incorporating unsaturated fats and fiber into the diet is key for those with or at risk for type 2 diabetes. There are so many traditional foods and dishes in Hispanic and Latino cultures that are nutrient dense and contain unsaturated fats and fiber. For example, avocados, as I had mentioned before, in all of the cuisines throughout the Hispanic and Latino regions are very common in Hispanic Latino cuisine. They are also a good source of fiber and have unsaturated fats, primarily monounsaturated fats. So they are easy and tasty way to add these nutrients. For example, tacos. They are one of the most beloved and popular Mexican foods. I mean, they are, I would say, synonymous with Mexico. So combining a corn tortilla, and that is corn tortilla, a whole grain, with beans, tomatoes, and chopped avocado. It is a perfect heritage food that provides good unsaturated fat and dietary fiber, as well as protein. So then we have the pupusa that I had mentioned before, and that is the Salvador national dish. So when we have the pupusa that it's stuffed with either meat or beans or squash and any other fillings, usually a pupusa is paired with curtido, which is a slaw. It's a cabbage carrot slaw. But what about pairing it with a slice of avocado? That would be a great way to incorporate monounsaturated fat and fiber, and a delicious treat as well. Also, there are many different ways that are non-traditional, but they are also delicious. So what about replacing some oil or butter in baked goods with pureed avocado? Baking an egg inside half of an avocado. that might be something that people may have never thought about, but and it's also visually appealing. I mean, taking out a tray from the oven with, beautiful half avocado and then having the egg, adding the protein, but it's just visually beautiful for a breakfast. And then what about using a creamy avocado to pour over your salad as a choice, and spreading it on toast or any other kind of grain that you're going to serve, that or on a sandwich. So I would say that these are great ways to use avocado in Hispanic, Latino subgroups.
So yeah, avocados kind of make everything better. They make it look better, taste better, and add nutritional value.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and we can obtain knowledge to improve our cultural competency, but cultural humility is more about understanding the complexity of an individual's identity and their lived experiences and looking within ourselves to understand our own blind spots and biases. Why is it so important to understand different cultural cuisines as dietitians? And can you talk for a minute about the importance of both cultural competency and cultural humility?
Sure. So as health providers, we must have the knowledge, right? And then we also have the awareness of traditional health beliefs and practices, the cultural values, cuisines and food preferences, and disease prevalence and incidence among different populations. So developing the knowledge and awareness isn't easy, and it requires patience, being thoughtful, and staying up on the latest research recommendations as they're constantly evolving. And it requires you and me as a healthcare provider to be open in a way that we genuinely attempt to understand a person's identity. So personally, I like to say culturally competency development. And the reason that I use the word development is because it is not a destination. So, because it is not a destination, I can never say that I become or anyone becomes culturally competent. And we get our diploma, we hang it, and we say, I am culturally competent because I am, and many people are constantly developing our culturally competency. And we require the humility to understand that this is something that it is ongoing and that we need to have the awareness and the desire and the humility to understand that this is something that we need to do. So both terms, competency became before humility. Those two and the definitions are very similar. They overlap in some ways, but I personally use culturally competency development because it's not finite, and we are constantly developing and growing as individuals. So addressing cultural competency development and culturally humility can help you create a layer of trust, identify small and manageable steps that can fit into a patient client's lifestyle, and then foster better communication and connection. I don't believe that we are ever going to know every foodway or culture, but when we ask questions, when we allow our client or patient to share, we are both learning valuable information to build a long-lasting partnership.
Thank you. That is so helpful and such an important topic for us all to really think about every day as we work with our patients and our clients. So I love all the data and evidence you've provided. It highlights the value of culturally appropriate interventions that can benefit the nutritional status of families and individuals at risk for diabetes, prediabetes, and cardiometabolic conditions. What are some resources out there that you recommend to help our viewers put this information into action? Are there any resources you recommend that are especially useful in the practice setting?
Yes, Loved One Today has a resource for the Hispanic and Latino audience called Saborea Uno Hoy. Their website at saboreaunohoy.com includes culturally inspired recipes, tips, and educational handouts in Spanish. This is a great resource for health care professionals to get inspiration or to send their patients to. LoveOneToday.com offers a lot of resources for healthcare professionals related to type 2 diabetes care, cardiovascular health, and general healthy living. They frequently share nutrition research and free continuing education opportunities. And you can also find additional resources in both Spanish and English on CDCES website.
Well, thank you for taking the time to join us today and share all of these valuable and practical resources with our viewers. Do you have any final thoughts or calls to action for the listeners that you want to share?
Yes, of course. It wouldn't be Lorena. So remember to inquire about your patient's cultural background to center the counseling according to your patient's place of origin. Remember that. The level of acculturation, lifestyle, budget, food access, food preferences, purchasing pattern, or all of those things will affect the diet. Asking the right question, listening may help identify them. Things such as, again, I'm going to go over a list of questions very quickly. Do you buy canned beans? Do you buy dried beans? Do you make your corn tortillas from scratch? Do you buy them in the store? Do you grow your own vegetables? How do you call this food or dish in your own country, city, or region? How is it prepared? This is a very important question to ask. Although language, Spanish, can unite us, the same way, the same words may have different meanings, just like I said before. For example, I mentioned about the tortilla, but I am also going to say about something else, the word plátano. The word plátano may be in Spanish in a food questionnaire, but the word plátano for a Mexican is a banana. But the word plátano for a Colombian or a Caribbean is a plantain. The same thing, avocado in Spanish is aguacate, but it's palta for someone in Argentina. And suggest adding foods that contain unsaturated fat and fiber, such as avocado, in many different ways. So adding it to foods, adding it to soups. So overall, it's important to remember that not one plan is going to be the same, and incorporating heritage foods and making modifications that are acceptable may be a win-win for a client. So those are my tips.
Lorena, thank you again for joining us on this episode of The Forefront. I know our viewers appreciate the knowledge and expertise you bring in this area.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure to be here with you today, Sasha. Muchas gracias.
We want to thank our sponsor, Loved One Today, for their support of this episode of The Forefront. Make sure to check out loveonetoday.com to access a full range of practical resources like research, free educational materials, how-to tips like how to store and prepare avocados, and a collection of easy-to-make recipes. They even have a newsletter that delivers continuing education, new research alerts, and recipe inspiration for your patients. all directly to your inbox. If you work with a Hispanic or Latino population, they've got you covered there too. SaboreaUnoHoy.com is their resource designed especially for the Hispanic and Latino audience, providing culturally inspired recipes, tips, and educational handouts in Spanish. Thanks for tuning in, and check out diabeteseducator.org/forefront for more and the links to resources from today's episode.